Welcome to Vasquez Rocks. Yay! These guys, you guys see a wave of blue up front. These are all Cub Scouts. They're camping here, so they're enjoying one of the many uses of the park. And they get free cookies today, so that's extra exciting, huh? This guy's excited. I like it. This guy's my spirit animal right here. All right, so about this series. So I always have to put this up front because I dedicate this whole thing. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna start getting teary-eyed already. To my dad. So my dad was Art Brewer. He's an incredible person. He was obsessed with Vasquez Rocks. He loved history. He loved preservation. Since I was a little kid, and I grew up right on the corner by the elementary school, I've been just as entrenched and obsessed with this place as he was. So basically, I just can't help myself. So this is me and my dad here down in the big parking lot at, I think it was one of the, you two might remember. We have two of our Tatavium family members here, which is absolutely awesome. So did you two ever come to the, yes. We'll talk about you guys more next week too, or next month. Did you guys come when there was powwows here? So many, like 25 years ago, we used to have some powwows here, and I think this was at one of them. So this was me when I was probably like 6 or 7, and that was my dad with our Vasquez Rocks Nature Center Associate shirts. The VRNCA folks are in the back. So this is what I grew up doing. This is what I love. I went to college for this. I studied history and archaeology, so I have 3 degrees in history and 1 in anthropology. I worked as an archaeologist before I had this job, and then as a mad science teacher, which is really funny. So if I get a little like, woo, you guys will know why, because that's what I did for a long time. And when I went to grad school for history, I actually did my master's thesis on Vasquez Rocks because I'm obsessed. So this is it. There's a picture of it, but this is it. It's a 165-page history of nothing except Vasquez Rocks. So yeah, I know. I like this guy. Oh my gosh. So what this series is basically my thesis broken down chapter by chapter. So we're going to go by themes, but mainly it's a chronological history. Today we're starting with 25 million years of geologic history, and then we move up to how it became a park and all about this building and tie it up with a nice little bow. So we're going to do them once a month. We're missing 1 month in between because we have docent training. So if you guys are interested in becoming trained volunteers here and you want to learn all the things, come do that with us. But otherwise, it'll usually be the second Saturday every month until June. So hopefully, if I don't drive you crazy, you'll come see me again. So these are the dates for those. We've got flyers. Shirley, that cute little lady in the back, she's got plenty of flyers with these dates if you guys want to grab one on your way out. They all have a different theme. So if you're more interested in one over the others, by all means, come to that one. You don't have to come to them all. But I should have a punch card. We were joking last year. There was a group of seniors from the senior club that would always come, and I'm like, I'm going to give you guys a punch card to do them all. So today we're going to talk about geology. Once we do that, we're going to take a little, between 5 and 10 minute break, let you guys get up, stretch your legs. And then we're going to do plants and animals, and then any questions you guys have, and then we'll do a preview for the next one. Okay, so a lot of you are probably wondering about the crazy looking rocks here at Vasquez Rocks. And to kind of set the stage, we're going to zoom out a little bit and look at California as its own region, right? Because you guys know California is incredibly diverse in every way that it could be. And geologically, that's no exception. So you look at California's regions and mountain ranges, and you notice that they mostly go north to south, right? They follow the shape of the state, except for one little spot, which is right here. And of course, that's where we are. It goes side to side. So you'll notice that our mountains here don't largely run north to south. They run east to west. And that kind of sets the stage for a lot of the really explosive geologic activity that we've had here. So this is one of my favorite pictures. This is actually from 1963. Yeah, this is an old picture too. And you guys will learn more about this in some of the other talks, but the county actually did kind of a little aerial survey when they were purchasing the park. So this was part of that. So I found this, and this is super helpful to show you guys the way that these formations look from the air. So you can see they all go parallel to each other. They don't crisscross. They don't go different directions. They're all roughly going to the northeast. So kind of keep this in mind as we talk about how this all happened. And you guys might wonder, this is the big famous rock right here. This is the park road, and those are the main parking lots. So they're old. Everybody asks why we put those parking lots there. It's like we didn't. They've been here for 100+ years, so yeah. So around us, which you guys may or may not know, but it's good for our scouts to know, of course. So straight north from us is a small mountain range. That's the Sierra Pelona Mountains. Really beautiful little range. It's got a lot of rapid uplift, but it kind of frames us to the north, right? So if you look out from here, I can see them out the window that way. On the other side, so facing the opposite direction, this is down in the field that's by the big rock. And you guys can see all those beautiful mountains in the distance. Those are the San Gabriel Mountains. So a lot bigger, a lot more activity, but just as important as the others in terms of our geology. And people ask me if there's fault lines out here. No. There's a lot of them. Everybody thinks the San Andreas is the only one and she's out there by herself. No. There's quite a few. This is zoomed out quite a bit. So Vasquez Rocks is, let me point it out to you. Oh wait, my arrow works? Oh, I didn't realize that. So here's Castaic Lake. So here's Soledad, here's Acton. So Vasquez is right around this area, I think. So you can see all of these different fault lines. The different colors, orange, green, purple, have to do with types of faults and ages of faults. But it gives you an idea of how many just scattered across this landscape there are. So this is zoomed in a little bit. So there's Vasquez Rocks, this little green thing right here. So you'll notice one of those black lines goes through the park. So we actually have a fault line in the park. We've got a lot of faults north, south, east, and west of us also, which have helped with a lot of this movement. But just to take it in, like, does anybody know where Hubbard Road is? The closer side of Hubbard? Hubbard is a fault. And I live off of Hubbard, so found that out recently, and I was like, oh, that's good. That's nice. Yeah, all around there. Yeah, because Parker's on here, huh? Yeah, Parker's surrounded too. Okay. So this is the, like he said, see, I need to have these guys up here with me. This is the big famous rock. And you guys can see that looking at it, you'll notice all of that layering, right? But you notice that layering is not flat. The way that this happened is, so those mountain ranges I was telling you guys about, the Sierra Pelona and the San Gabriel, are above us, right? They're still above us. But go back, say, 25 million years, we're in what's called a basin. So you guys know what a valley is. I always tell the kids, V for valley, B for basin, like a bowl. So a basin is exactly what it sounds like. It's a low point that is surrounded on all sides by mountain ranges. And what you have with mountains is they don't stay the same forever, right? They erode, they change, they start to fall apart. So you have things eroding from all of these mountain ranges around us that come and settle into the bottom. And you have that happening for millions of years. This is how I explain to the kids too. So what happens if you have a backpack, or you have your backpack, you have your sandwich that you put in a bag in your backpack. It's got bread, your meat, cheese, lettuce, tomato, bread. What happens if that gets smashed? It's not big and fluffy anymore. It's really compacted and the layers get mushed together. That's exactly what happens with all the material that erodes down from these mountains and settles at the lowest point because of gravity. And that keeps happening. It keeps compounding. So you have, this is obviously a sedimentary rock, right? So it's different types. It's mostly sandstone, which you can tell by looking at it. It's very sandy looking. It's tan. It's very light, but it forms flat. So say I have to go this way, forms flat this way. And because of all those little faults that you guys saw, it goes through tremendous uplift and goes up to 50-degree or sometimes even greater angles than that. So imagine all of these layers being flat and all of the violent energy it took to lift them that high. And this guy is at least 15 stories. So that's a lot of movement. And you can see too, there's a little bit of different coloring that we're going to talk about, but you can tell how much it took to do this and that it wasn't a one-time process either, right? Some people think that it was like a couple of big earthquakes that did that. It took it took millions of years for it to get to this angle. So this is a little excerpt of a really interesting geologic map. And you guys, if you just Google this, if you Google that phrase up top, you can pull up this big, beautiful map that they have for free online. So this shows the different concentrated rock types that make up the ground here at Vasquez. You can see, so a lot of this kind of orangey one is our kind of pinkish, tannish sandstone. But this shows the different depths. It shows fault lines. It shows rock types. The further you go into Santa Clarita, they don't have primary sandstone like we do here. So that's kind of interesting. So this is where this is zoomed out. So you can see Santa Clarita gets more blue, purple, which are all andesite and all different kinds of like granitic and different types of rock than we have up here. And I throw this date around of around 25 million years. The reason we know that is because they've dated associated layers of rock that are volcanic, because certain volcanic rocks you can actually date, which is really, really useful. Sandstone, you can't really do that. But with volcanic, you can see there's ranges of around 23 to 25 million years. So that's usually the number that we use. So those are the oldest layers, are around 25, and they think the youngest layers are between 6 and 10 million years. So they're grandma rocks. They're a little bit older. And you'll notice too with the layers that they don't all look the same, right? When you guys are out in the park, if you look closely, you'll see things like lines. You'll see that some layers are really skinny. Some are way taller than me and have big boulders in them. And that has to do with the way that they're deposited, right? So if you look at this big old chunk, and it might be hard to see because it's a little bit bright for you guys, but this layer right here, right, has a ton of big granitic rocks in it. A lot of those are like bigger than bowling balls. So what blows my mind too, a side note, is those granitic rocks were already formed and millions of years old when they were deposited into the forming sandstone. Like, I don't understand the age of like a lot of these parts of the formations. So what you have above it, so this layer is full of rocks, so it's really strong. But if you look where that yellow arrow is, see how it's very sunken? That's a really soft layer. It was very sandy or muddy, so it just erodes really fast. So that's why you guys will see big solution holes in the rock, or layers that look like they're missing, or layers where it breaks. That's because some are soft, some are hard, some have a lot of different mineral content in it that others don't have. So that's also why you have color variation too. If you have layers that have more manganese or more iron, it can change the color of the layer also. And what we call that different type of erosion is differential erosion, because all the layers don't erode equally at the same time and in the same way. So this is off the Pacific Crest Trail on the farther side of the park. So that's a really beautiful area. So you can see the uplift, but you can see how water and wind and just being outside for millions and millions of years has affected all of these rocks. They're very rounded. Erosion usually rounds and weathers things nicely. You'll see sharp angles when things break. Weather doesn't usually cause things to just erode at a sharp angle like that, but little earthquake activity, and you've had big rocks that have come loose also. So here's another shot, just more of the layering. And you can see sometimes too, between layers, there are huge areas and belts where there's a lot of soil, so you can have a lot more plant growth. So it looks like it's basically just a forest in the middle of all of this rock, but it just has to do with the erosion, how the rock has worn, and how much soil can sit and sustain there. Here's one more. This one's neat. This is just back here. It's kind of like a terrace, so you have all of these layers of these juniper trees growing on these giant steps, which is always kind of neat. This guy is just off the Nature Heritage Trail if you run up and over. Doesn't look like much, but this rock is huge. So this one is very strong. It's multiple stories high. It's absolutely huge. But you can see it's eroded nicely and evenly. It looks like a giant football, but it's strong enough that it's just stayed there when everything around it has eroded away. This is one of my favorite rocks. I know, it's so weird looking. A lot of people will call this the Sphinx rock or the Cobra rock, which I can understand. I see why. This thing is probably 2 stories high. It's pretty big. And it's sheer coincidence that it eroded with 2 even eyes, 2 nostrils, and then 2 giant buck teeth looking things. And this is off, if you guys take the Pacific Crest Trail on the ridge and then it drops down, this is right at the bottom. So, and it's looked like this for a while. I have pictures from the 1930s that they took of this and it looks exactly the same. But it's just kind of interesting. So this, again, is the differential erosion. This is where you have water that has caused these holes to form. But just the fact that it did 2, 2, and 2 is really kind of eerie. These are two of my other favorites. You guys might have seen these. This is the witch's hat. I like to call it the sorting hat. Do we have any Harry Potter fans up in here? Mm-hmm. Ravenclaw. But it has a little round head underneath too. So it's like, how does that work out? This is actually for our scout group too. This is actually just right on the, you know that really steep rock in the campground right there? It's actually the steepest rock in the park, I think. This is on the side of that. So if you walk around, you can see the witch's hat. This one, and it's funny that I picked this. This is actually is not the best photo of it. But this guy right here, you can see kind of looks more like a whale or a fish than a frog. But the homesteaders used to call it the frog's mouth. So we call it the frog's mouth. This is on the left side of the road as you're driving down by the big rock too. So part of this differential erosion are things called solution holes. So we don't actually have caves here. Everybody always asks us, oh, where's the caves? Where's the caves? We don't have true caves. We have solution holes or rock shelters, kind of little overhangs. But it's basically areas where water has been able to really erode out certain spots of the rock faster than others. This one is really gigantic. This was, you can see it's green. This was when we had rain. Do you guys remember that? You guys weren't alive yet. The babies weren't born yet. But one time when we had rain many moons ago, these giant basins, you can actually fit a car in this one. So the homesteaders too, and I'm sure the many native people that lived here for thousands of years, this is a good swimming hole right here and a good catch basin to store drinking water. I checked on these the other day. They're bone dry for the first time I've ever seen them be dry, which is very sad. So you can have ones that are flat like that, or you can have ones that are at an angle and kind of an overhang like this. So that one's got a lot going on. You can see it's real soft, so it's really hollowed out. But solution holes are great because they're great shelter for a lot of different critters, right? A lot of the time when you see solution holes, you'll have all kinds of different, you can see that a coyote was hanging out in there, or a little wood rat if it's a little tiny one, anything like that. So nice little natural features that are very useful for people and animals. Yes, my friend.
I went in something like that.
Did you? You went in there? They're also really good traps for kids. You show them a solution hole, they're in it. I know that because I still do it, I should say. Yeah. So one thing you guys will notice too is that there's dark discoloration on the rock. It's not paint. Typically, it's not even anything to do with humans. There are spots, like when this was private property and people kind of had more spread out campfires, some areas are burned, but for the most part, it's actually something that we call by the nickname desert varnish. Out in the Mojave Desert, I don't know if you guys have seen true desert varnish, but it's really incredible. It looks like glossy lacquer, like black paint on the rock, and it's kind of shiny, really pretty. Out here, ours is a little rough, especially too because it's on sandstone. But it's basically manganese oxide, which is a mineral that's already in the rock that kind of erode, through weathering, through sun, heat, wind, and millions of years, basically kind of seeps its way out of the rock and it forms on the surface. So this is nothing anybody put on there. It's something that came out and forms like a crust almost on the outside. So you can see how it has shadows. This layer is typically harder than what's underneath it. So it's like I always tell the kids, and then I lose them after I say this, it's like an M&M on the outside. So the shell's harder than what's inside. So the inside underneath it will erode. So sometimes oh, thank you, my friend. Sometimes you'll have areas of this where everything underneath it is almost gone. So there's quite a bit of it. And then if you guys can see too, the yellow and green on the rocks, we're gonna talk about that today too, because we get asked about that an awful lot. So we went through that in pretty good time. But I want to know real quick if you guys have any quick questions about geology. I kind of went a little fast, but I also don't want to keep you here for 6 hours. So, yeah. Uh-huh.
Guys that work here said that you guys were getting a lot of tagging and paint.
Yeah. So she's asking about graffiti, which luckily it's not as much of a problem here as it is with some of our other natural area parks like Eaton Canyon, San Dimas, San Pedro. So we have them all across LA County. We do get it here. And luckily it's pretty easy to do on sandstone. Jonathan was here. He's always the one that gets stuck doing it. But basically if it's a softer layer, the magic we do is we take a toilet brush, a new one whose job only it is to do this. And then you take a little bucket of water and some sand off the ground and you just exfoliate that little layer off. Yeah, if it's a really hard layer, which sometimes they're very compact, we actually will take a light colored paint and go over it. And there's crews, like there's a volunteer group that works for Angeles National Forest, and those guys are really on top of it because they'll take stiff brushes and they'll like speckle it and match it exactly, and then people will come do it again. But basically, yeah, so we try not to do the paint unless we absolutely have to. Most of the time we don't have to, which is a good thing. So for you guys, if you're ever out in the park and you see graffiti, take a picture of it. If you can GPS where it is on your phone or a landmark nearby, let us know, because we'll go out usually that day or the next day and we'll take care of it. So, because we need all of your eyes out there because we can't. The park is almost 1,000 acres. I don't know if you knew that. So it's quite large. And there's a lot of areas where people can get into shenanigans. So keep an eye out for us. Okay, last question. I'll let you guys take a quick break. Yeah. That is such a good question. I should have thought of that. I am How old are you?
8.
I was just shamed by an 8-year-old. So he asked about fossils. So that's a super good question, which I always forget to address because we don't have a ton here. So you guys may have heard that we were underwater here. We were never underwater. We were actually beachfront. Santa Clarita was underwater. Santa Clarita was under the ocean. So up in the hills in Santa Clarita, you can find in certain areas too a lot of shell fossils, or even there's whale fossils in Santa Clarita, which is pretty amazing. Luckily, I think they're hard to find and hard to get to, which is why they're still there. But here, because we were never underwater, we only have land animal fossils, and we don't have that many, especially in the park. I can't speak to every layer, but I'm pretty sure most of our layers, especially the visible ones, are not fossil bearing at all. The only ones that I know of for sure are heavily fossilized deer bone that came from a friend's property off of Davenport. And it's so old that there's beautiful garnet crystals growing into the deer bone, which is really neat. But it was land mammals. So if you guys see, have you guys been to La Brea Tar Pits before? Oh, you gotta go. It's the best thing ever. Giant sloth. Look up a Harlan's sloth. It's like a 9-foot tall sloth. Yeah, no. Mm-mm. But we had things like that. We had the giant sloths. We had ancestors of the horse, camels, just a lot of land mammals like that. Dire wolves, that's always fun. Those are real. Those are not fake. But also species like the raccoon, coyote, bobcat, a lot of relatives. We had an American lion. Look that up too. Look up Pleistocene megafauna. It's terrifying. Terrifying. Like the lion that is bigger than an African lion with that giant sloth. So yeah, so that's a really, really good question to ask about fossils. I forget because we don't really have a lot of fossils here in the park, but in the area, like I said, just those, a lot of different land mammals, birds, stuff like that. So, okay, so we're gonna start with plants because they're the best. So obviously at Vasquez Rocks, we're different than a lot of other parks, right? Because above anything else, we're a nature preserve. We're a 965 acre protected natural area, which is really, really cool. And that means that our priority above anything else is protecting native plants and animals, and also doing things like this where we're able to educate people that come to the park to enjoy it. So, sorry, let me pause this for a second while your ears will thank me. Hold on. Booyah. See if this helps. How about this? Is it squealing? Good? Okay. All right. Sorry, guys. So basically here at Vasquez Rocks, in this big diverse area that we've got 4 what we call plant communities. So plant community is just a scientific designation that we use to identify certain areas, right? So you guys have heard of chaparral, I'm sure. That's the big one that everybody knows about. But most of Vasquez is actually not chaparral. It's actually what's called a pinyon juniper woodland, or I call it just a juniper woodland because we don't really have pinyon pines in this area. With areas kind of mixed in with chaparral, coastal sage scrub, and then riparian woodland. So the 2 most obvious ones are the first and the last one listed right here. So I'm going to show you pictures of those. So most of the park where you see junipers all over the place, that's a juniper woodland. It's like, and if you may have heard of an alpine woodland, when you go into Angeles National Forest and you have a lot of pine trees, that's an alpine woodland. So you have a lot of a concentration of those species that really make it clear what it is. There's the frog's mouth again. Riparian, on the other hand, is very different. So this one you guys will only see if you go into the lower points in the park, like the canyons, like down off the Pacific Crest Trail. So riparian areas are categorized by a higher concentration of water. And you'll have different plant and animal species that you won't see anywhere else in the park. Like, so for example, poison oak, we don't have a ton of it, but the only stuff we do have is down in this canyon because there's enough water for it there. So these 2 pictures I took last, I think, May. So you can see how much greenery is down there. So you have a lot of different species that require more water. So you have the bigger, like Fremont cottonwood trees, western sycamores, which are some of my favorites. A lot of different species that need to get and keep their toes wet down there. And when, again, before all of our little friends up here were born and we had water, there was typically water down here year round. And even on a decent rain year, there still is a little bit of water trickling, or it's at least muddy. Little tadpoles down there. So we do have frogs and other waterborne species like that, but they obviously suffer when we have periods of drought like we've been in for quite a while. When I was a kid, even in the higher parts of the park, there were little seasonal streams that you could see these in. So that was much higher, before the water table continued to drop and we had less and less water, less and less rain. So fingers crossed it happens again. Yeah.
Yeah. Sometime earlier this year, after a rain, we came to the parking lot, and driving back on the road, there was water coming out. Is there springs throughout here?
Yes. So that's funny that you asked. So they're asking about if you guys have seen on the road that goes into the park, just near the big rock, like right in front of it, there's water that bubbles up. I don't think we've figured out exactly what that actually is. We think it's plumbing, and our county plumbers have dug it out. I think it's actually, we think it might be a historic pipe. It could be natural, but we don't think it is. And it's not all the time. It's like once in a blue moon it'll do it, because there was irrigation run down there when it was a homestead. So we don't know if it has something to do with that. I'm not sure. but it's interesting though, because whether it's man-made or not, you'll see prints all around it, like the bobcats use that to drink out of, because it's it's a puddle. It's like the size of 2 of these seat cushions put together. It's very small. So yeah, I don't know. So here's one more shot on that same day of the bottom of the canyon. So it was dry. It was wet in certain areas, but that's the sandy kind of creek bottom right there. But these are all cottonwoods and sycamores down there, which are real pretty. So it's just a little bit different landscape. And I always encourage people to go explore down in the canyon because it's really beautiful. Just make sure you know what poison oak looks like. But I've never had an issue with getting it. And I used to tromp through the bushes as a kid all the time. So here's 3 of the big native plants. I'm going to talk a little bit more about each one, but this is just to kind of ease you into the topic. So the big ones that you see probably the most of are things like the California juniper, the yucca, and then California or flat top buckwheat. And this is actually, I don't know if you guys knew that their flowers are this beautiful up close. They look like little lilies, which is kind of neat. But that's a very close picture. So next time you see those, give them an extra little bit of attention. So these are some of the plants that you'll see throughout this area, but also in Vasquez. And it's funny because plants that we have in the area are not necessarily all here and vice versa. So you guys will probably notice that there are areas that are covered with scrub oaks. Like a lot of you guys probably have scrub oaks if you live around here. I have none at my house. I have tons of junipers. My mom, who lives like 4 miles away, has only scrub oaks and no junipers, not one. So it's funny that even in this small area, you have a lot of specific little zones that have these different species. So these are all ones, a lot of these pictures were taken in the park, so I tried to keep them as, as local as possible. California juniper, obviously, it's a tree. It's not a bush, even though it looks like one. It's in the cypress family. So it's a conifer. So it makes cones, right? It's evergreen. So you guys have all seen those little blue looking berry things. Those are actually not berries, they're cones. They're actually a little concentrated cone. And I almost forgot, I brought these to pass around for you guys. So if you want to kind of, just like feel what these feel like, this is the seed that's inside those blue little cones. So this is when the outer flesh of it has been removed. So this is what will sprout a new plant. And then we have the chaparral yucca, which is the type of yucca that we have here. That's a really, really important plant. I'll talk a lot more about it next week because obviously it was a lifeline to the many native people that lived here because that is the most useful plant I think that exists possibly. You can use it from the very tippy top down to the bottom of the roots, which is pretty amazing. But it's funny because a lot of people come here from all over the world and people come from Europe and they're like, what are those porcupine things? And especially in the spring when they have the stalk that comes out, they're like, what is that? It's very different. And it's actually in the lily family, which is kind of neat. If you study families of plants, it's always neat to see who belongs to what. This one right here, the next one is the holly leaf cherry, which is actually in the rose family, which is so nice. This is a really neat one. A lot of people mix this up with a scrub oak because they have green leaves that have little spikies on the outside. They're not real huge. They stay, well, at least in this area, a little bit smaller. But they're the ones that have what a lot of people call a choke cherry. It's not technically the right name for them, but it is the fruit of the plant. And I have this basket I'm going to pass around. These are the empty pits of that. So you actually can't eat these. I don't recommend it to whoever because sometimes it can bother your stomach. But some people can have a little bit of a reaction in your throat with it. For me, I really like them because they taste like a plum almost on the outside, but it's really thin. So this is the pit. The whole fruit is barely bigger than this. It's like a 1/16 of an inch layer. So you would have to harvest quite a bit, but you obviously don't want to do that because then you're eliminating the possibility for that plant to also reproduce. And they take so long to grow, so we want to leave them be. But they're really neat to look at, and the animals love to eat them and go after them. So I'm going to pass this one around so you can look at these two. These are kind of cool because the bugs help me out, and you'll see little pinholes in these. So little buggy, I wait till they fall, and little buggies will go in and eat the middle part out, and then they're like, okay, bye. So they leave the little hollow outside part in there. The scrub oak, so those are our little tiny baby acorns that come on the scrub oaks. They're one of the smaller species of oaks, which obviously there's dozens and dozens and dozens of species of oaks throughout the world. The one that we have the most of in the middle of town here is these little dudes. There's some in the park here, not a ton, but there's quite a few. If you go to the edges of town, down by like Sierra Highway by where La Chene is, you'll have the coast live oaks, so the big, beautiful oaks that have those bigger, a little bit more useful acorns. These guys are they're like the width of like a pencil eraser and like that long. So they're very cute, but they're not the best for if you're relying on it for food. Chamise is the one that you'll also see almost more than anything out here. If you guys walk down any of the trails and you see a very nondescript looking green bush, it's chamise, and it's everywhere. It's also often called greasewood. And it is highly flammable. So that's why if you do have it near your house, you might want to do a little bit of brush clearance. If it's not near your house, it's a great native plant to have. It's a lot of great food and pollen and shelter for native animals. So make sure, leave them alone. But you want to be careful if you have it near any structures because very flammable. To the point where like the homesteaders too, it was a very useful plant to have to use as kindling also because they had a lot of it and they didn't have a lot of anything else. California sagebrush is another one, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, as well as black sage, another very special plant, and then buckwheat, which you guys know what buckwheat looks like. Everybody knows what buckwheat looks like. And right now it's becoming more dry. The flowers have dried out and it's gone to seed, so it has that beautiful rusty red color. So that's once the flowers dry, you get, it always adds a beautiful color and texture to the landscape too. And we'll talk about more next time, but buckwheat was another staple food for native people here. So a few more. I'm going to talk about the cactus and this little cute succulent guy in just a minute. We have another one called elderberry, another super useful plant. This is the one that you guys see, they look like they're dead all over town until late in the spring. Everything else is kind of on its way out, and this guy's like, I'm here! And they're really beautiful green, and you're like, where did that come from? And they have these dark berries, which you can use for a lot of different purposes. They make elderberry everything, wine, jam, anything you can think of. But those you definitely usually want to process before you consume them. So I am not suggesting that anyone goes and eats anything off of a plant. There's some of us who know how to do it and know what we're doing, but for your safety and for the respect of the plants, just let them be. But elderberry, you do want to process because that can be very rough on your stomach also. White sage, the most sacred plant that we have here, which we'll talk a little bit about more in a minute. Western sycamore and the cottonwood, a lot of people get those mixed up, so I figured I'd show you what the leaves look like. The sycamore leaf looks like a giant dinosaur foot sometimes, especially if you go to parks where there's more moisture. Like at Eaton Canyon, they're huge and they're like giant toed dinosaur feet. Here, ours are a little bit smaller. And if you guys have like a London plane, does anybody have a London plane tree at their house? I've got 2 of them, but those are like a hybrid of a true sycamore and a maple, so they're just kind of decorative. One of my favorite plants, I think maybe my very favorite, is the manzanita, especially the big berry manzanita. That's what we have here. I'm sure you guys have seen these around. They're very striking, incredibly beautiful trees. They take forever to grow. You can have some that are 150 years old and don't even get that large depending on the water that they get. But manzanitas are funny because they require very, very specific care, and where they're planted has to be just right. You'll see these guys growing on cliff sides. And again, we talked about plants that like to keep their toes wet. These guys want to like get them wet once in a while and then stay dry. So they'll grow on these crazy rocky surfaces on these slopes, but you'll have a hard time growing one in your garden, which is kind of funny. So sometimes in town here, you'll see a really beautiful one, and they have that really smooth, really red bark. It's absolutely beautiful. And they develop a fruit that kind of looks like the hollyleaf cherry, but it's actually white. Like a lot of our Spanish speakers probably recognize manzanita as meaning small apple. So that's where the name came from. It looks like little red apples. And this guy, remember what this looks like. Poison oak. Like I said, we don't have a ton of it, but on a good rain year, we will have quite a bit down below in the canyon. So you just want to make sure you know what that looks like before you go down there. But also, if you stay on the trail like you're supposed to, you won't have problems. But it also does, as it goes further into its season, it will turn red. And it does depend too. We've noticed how, because it's the oil in the leaf, right? That's what's irritating. I have high school interns, and I had all of them. I had like 19 this summer, and I think they all hit poison oak. And nobody reacted though, because it was up in the mountains in the forest where it was very dry. So there wasn't very much oil. So fingers crossed, but just be very careful. And if you think you have exposure to poison oak, it doesn't show up right away. It can take days. So just FYI. A couple more. We talked about our buckwheat. I think my favorite wildflower, there's 2 of them on here. The Mariposa lilies, there's dozens and dozens of types, but they're absolutely beautiful. Like that white one, they're about this big. Tons of different types, almost any color that you can imagine. And they're really kind of special because they'll grow in seemingly random places, and they're on a very long, skinny stem, and just one flower usually. There might be 2 or 3, but usually it's just one. They'll grow up. They figured out too that if they grow through yucca, they're less likely to get eaten, which is really smart. So here in the park, you'll see a lot of that. We have more of the yellow ones. The yellow ones will grow up through the yucca, and then they're safe, which is really cool. But they're absolutely beautiful. They have 3 petals, which is kind of unique too. The yucca obviously has beautiful flowering. Usually I notice it's around Father's Day, so happy Father's Day, dads. Black sage has a beautiful purple flower. This is my other favorite flower, is the California bluebell, or sometimes people call it a desert bluebell, but it's a type of phacelia, which there's also a lot of those. So if you guys drive out here and you see the hillsides go purple, it's these little dudes. It's any one of many types of phacelia. This is the one that my property is covered with. This was from my house. They're absolutely awesome. And they look similar, you guys might notice, to everyone's favorite, if you have horses, fiddleneck. And we've had people ask us too why we don't get rid of the fiddleneck here, because if you guys don't know, fiddleneck can be dangerous or deadly to livestock, especially horses. But it's a native plant. It's a native plant, and we're in a protected area, so it's one of those things where you just have to really keep an eye on your horse or your goats or whatever if you do have, again, it looks like this, but it's the yellow. It's kind of got that scorpion, that kind of hooked shape to it. And then this is another one, wild hyacinth, which is really pretty. You guys will see these growing around too. Again, on a really long stem, and they're like little clusters of them at the top, but they're absolutely beautiful though. We have a lot of yellows and purples more than anything else. Here's some of the pink ones, which I absolutely love. The speckled clarkia is a really beautiful one that I hardly ever see, but when I do see it, it's in areas where there's a lot more moisture. Wishbone bush, that's another one that can come in purple or white. There was quite a few of those a couple years ago. Most of these pictures came 2 years ago after those really crazy rains we had. And last year we had hardly any. Thistle is one that you guys probably hear all about. There's a lot of invasive, nasty species of thistle that we have, but we also have native ones. So if you see one that looks like that, they look like an artichoke plant, because artichoke is a thistle, right? But that one looks like it's covered with cobwebs, but it's not. It's just natural. So it's called cobweb thistle. Beavertail cactus has those beautiful fuchsia magenta flowers, which I absolutely love. Goldfields, those are those little yellow guys that you'll just see like carpet covering things. Those guys are really beautiful too. The kids love the name of this one, sticky monkey flower. It's the best. Santa Clarita's got a lot of these too. Like if you guys drive on the 14, and those guys show up late in the season also, but they're like the manzanita, and the reason they're called sticky monkey is they will just grow on cliff sides. You'll see them off the 14 on those big road cuts, just hanging, just big beautiful bouquets of them hanging and cascading, and they're in a family, called monkey flowers, because some of them look exactly like a little monkey face. They're very cute. Of course I didn't put one on here, but bush sunflower is another one. You guys, a lot of people actually think those are weeds, which is so funny to me because they're very tall and they show up after everybody else is gone. But they're, about this big. They can be very tall. They'll grow off the side of the freeway too, but those are a native sunflower, which is really neat. And then the one that I actually have not even seen here in quite a while is the California poppy, which everybody knows. So we'll have to hope those guys get their population back up again, because I haven't seen much of them here since I was a kid. A couple others. I had to do this one big because this is my mom's very favorite. This is called a woolly blue curl, because if you look at it, you can't really tell that well, but they're fuzzy. And it's in the mint family. It's with the sages and lavender. The sage family, or the mint family, is the best, by the way. It's my favorite. Really beautiful plant. That was here at Vasquez that couple years ago. This is purple nightshade. So this also is one that can be not super safe for your animals or for you to eat. Obviously don't eat anything, just don't. Or even handling. So this guy, it's funny because you'll notice they're very sensitive to light. So they'll kind of hang their little heads down until they get just the right amount that they want. So we obviously washed our hands after, but so you guys could see that really pretty shape. I saw a lot of these this last year, so figured I'd point them out. Two really special plants that are one of my favorite that everybody asks about are our native cacti and succulents. You guys know succulents are really popular right now, right? Everybody loves them, can't get enough of them. We have native ones, and the primary native one that we have here, I haven't seen another species of them in the area, is called a lancelet deadlia or a lancelet live forever. Usually they call the family of these guys live forevers. So I don't know if you saw over the past year, Fish and Wildlife and a bunch of different agencies were talking about the huge problem going on with these. Did you guys hear about that? Poaching. You can't just poach animals, you can also poach plants. So succulents are super easy because you can just break it off and stick it in dirt and off you go. You're good. So that makes them really easy to steal. So people were stealing thousands at a time of these really ecologically sensitive little plants, especially off the coast and off these cliff sides, because they like to grow. They're in the stone crop family, so they will grow just out of sheer rock and on these beautiful cliff sides that once you wipe them out, though, they're not going to come back. They can't reproduce if they're not there. So they were doing raids and pulling out just like 1,200 at a time in these big bags. And it's really sad because I've noticed there's little areas of them here, little concentrations. And I went out a few months ago and one of the big concentrations is gone, which is really sad. It was there forever. So it's a bummer. So again, if you guys are out in the park, help be my eyes. Another one also is beavertail cactus. So that's one of two cactus species that we have here in the park. The beavertail ones are the ones with those beautiful fuchsia flowers, but they're usually little and kind of low growing, but they can spread out. Little teeny tiny spines on those guys. Another one is the prickly pear cactus. So you guys have seen the decorative ones that people have that get huge. Like at Hart Park, they've got a bunch of those really big, beautiful old one from the homestead days. Our native one, those are not native. Those are from more closer to Mexico, South America. Our native ones are little tiny guys, but they have the longer spines. And I saw one out in the park the other day, and it was the first time I've seen one of those in, I think, years. So keep an eye out. They're very, very beautiful little cacti, but they're teeny tiny. They're like a foot off the ground. So they don't get huge like the other ones do. So these are some of my absolute favorite plants. These are the sages. I use quotes because scientists like to confuse you guys. So sagebrush is not a sage. It's not even in the same family. It's in the sunflower family. It's so confusing. And kids are like, why? I'm like, I don't know. Don't ask me why, children. Why? I don't know. I have no idea. But I can see why, because at a glance, they're all very fragrant. I'm sure you guys have smelled them, but like California sagebrush, there's quite a bit of it out here. It's been hit really hard with the drought, so a lot of them since I was a kid have kind of died off. Like down by the Big Rock, there used to be a ton, and they're mostly not doing very well. But they have the little tiny, thin, soft-colored leaves, and they're very, very fragrant. They also call it cowboy cologne because back in the day, stinky cowboys without deodorant, man, just like put it around. It does. I really like the way it smells, but it's kind of strong. So these two are actual sages. This is black sage and white sage. You also have purple and other types of sages that kind of resemble the structure of this. White sage looks very, very different. Actually, if you guys go out front, not right now, but when you leave, you'll see very, almost big like a bay leaf. Beautiful soft green plants that are out there. Those are white sage. And we'll talk more next time too about just how special this plant is. It's the most sacred and the most medicinal plant that we have in this area. So it's just one that, and it's sad because right now there's also a huge problem with people, again, poaching white sage, right? Because making the smudge sticks and all of that is it's very trendy, but white sage needs to be treated with respect, right? You need to harvest it properly and responsibly. You need to, give to it if you take from it, right? You need to leave something. It's a trade-off. She's not just there for you to take, right? But that's the thing is a lot of even stores like Whole Foods or World Market, all these really big commercial places go in, and white sage can't grow everywhere. It's got very specific places and ecosystems that it thrives, but nowhere else in the world can it really grow like that. So they'll come in, basically poach it, which is really, really unfortunate, and then that population can't recover. So that's what we always recommend to people. If you love white sage and you're interested, grow your own. Go down to one of the native plant nurseries. You can get a little one for like $8. They're beautiful. They usually do really well in our yards out here. So just I have like 3 at home that I brought in. So it's just a really good thing to do. It's really great for hummingbirds. Love them, all the bugs, because they grow these beautiful stalks with these really soft white purpley flowers in the spring. So they're great for wildlife too. So don't be shy to go grab some. You can grab some black sage while you're there also. Black sage is also super fragrant, really, really beautiful. They're the ones that grow these little stems that have like these kind of round bunches of flowers that go up. So you guys might see those and not realize what they are and like, what is that? So those are the sages with their little fake cousin, California sagebrush. And what's interesting too is actually this is one of the furthest west areas where there's another species of sagebrush, which is called Great Basin sagebrush, which has kind of fatter leaves, but it's really big and beefy looking compared to the others. So if you see one that looks like that, it's a different species. So this is one everybody asks about. So this is really a really unassuming organism that's really, really cool. It's not necessarily a plant, kind of is. It's a really unique thing that was born out of two things coming together, which is really cool. So you guys have probably seen this all over the park. People think it's paint or some kind of graffiti or whatever it is. They never know what to make of it, but the kids are always like, what is that? So this is lichen. Lichen is super cool because it's made of two things. It's made of fungus and algae, neither of which can form this without the other. So if you guys think of fungus, you think of a mushroom, right? Mushroom can't do photosynthesis, but they have really good structure, right? They have all different shapes and sizes, but they have good little roots. They can hang on. They're fairly strong. I mean, not compared to us because we just go pluck them out, but you know what I mean? But they have the structure that algae doesn't. You guys that have fountains and pools, what happens if you neglect it for 5 minutes in the summer? It turns bright green, and that's algae. So algae is almost too good at performing photosynthesis, so it just goes crazy. But the structure is terrible. You touch it with your finger, and it just wipes away, so it's really weak. So you take the good of both. You take that great photosynthesis making skill with the great structural skill, and they come together and they create an entirely new organism, which is really neat. So that's what these are. Collections of them we call colonies. These are all a little bit different species of them. So the yellow is different than the gray, than the orange. They come in all different colors. Usually they do really well in areas where the air quality is good. So if you see it, it's a good thing. We like that. And it pulls its moisture basically any way that it can, but including when it's foggy. So when it's foggy, it just kind of absorbs it and it can hold it that way. But it can also survive drought, right? And there are some species, and don't ask me the names of them because there are so many. But some of them, they're very slow growing. And some of them, a square inch can take 50 years to grow. So this is why this is why we tell our friends, everything in the park is protected. Obviously, everything here grows really slowly. But if you can step on a rock that doesn't have lichen all over it, try not to. In the areas of the park that are either restricted or people don't go, the lichen is just explosive and it's so beautiful. But, you know, we want people to hike and enjoy and have fun. It's just, if you have the option, you know, just kind of check where you're stepping and think of these poor little old guys that are like, I'm trying to grow. They've been here for 75 years. This is another type, very kind of leafy, really neat looking one that you'll see a lot through the park too. I just like kind of showing the detail. This is that really pretty mint green one. Okay, and we talked a little bit about this, but I'm going to kind of close our little talk on the plants. I wish I could talk about them all, but again, I don't want to keep you guys here for 16 hours. This is one of my very favorite plants too. This is the chaparral yucca. There's obviously different types of yucca. Some get much bigger than others. You guys will notice too that the ones here are not that big. You go up through Angeles Forest and they're huge. There's one I took a picture next to. It was 15 feet tall. And I have to tell you what the stalk is called. It's called a peduncle. That's my favorite word. It's a peduncle. Kids love that too. I'm basically 6 years old, it's fine. But that's what these are pictures of, are peduncles. And it's actually kind of poetic and sad. Let me make you guys sad for a second. So you have the base of the yucca, right? That's that porcupine looking thing. All of those spines are the leaves of the plant, you know, like agave or anything else like that. It helps because it doesn't have to have a lot of water. They don't have big floppy leaves like a sycamore tree, so it requires very little water. But it's also very smart because when it rains, it directs the water straight to the root, right? And also with the yucca, all of those spines are barbed, so they're very sharp. Most of you that live here, yeah, everybody's like, yeah, yes. I don't even have to say anything. They really hurt. If you get in a fight with a yucca, it's gonna win. It will win every time, so just be very careful. The yucca is amazing because, like I said, it has so many unique adaptations, and it's gonna be hard for an animal to get to and a lot of ground squirrels and burrowing critters love eating the roots of plants. You guys might have had plants die because ground squirrels get under there and eat it while the top looks fine and then it falls over. People have had things like pepper trees just take a dive because the root base is totally gone. But these guys, it makes it harder to get to. You're not going down easy if you're a yucca. So they believe between 7 and 12 years. And at the end of its life, it will grow this peduncle, the stalk, one time. And it has the most beautiful flowers. They're really soft, whitish, kind of yellowy, really beautiful, just a spray of flowers. So this little green guy was a little tiny one. It was only about this tall. That's what it looks like while it's growing. And you guys will see it looks like just total alien plant growing up. And then it explodes in this beautiful color. They look like lanterns across the landscape. They're so pretty. And then it dies, which is so sad. So when you see any kind of agave too, you guys, if you have like the blue ones out here, the really big, huge decorative ones, it's always sad when you see that stalk. You're like, oh, it's so pretty. And then in a couple months. So just enjoy it. If you have your yuccas and they start stalking, yeah. Yep. It marks the end of its life. I know, that's how I feel. I'm like, oh. So yes, when you see them flowering, be like, good job, buddy. Good job. But the good thing is that when you see, so after this, they'll grow these seed pods that are the green things, are like this big that you guys have probably seen. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the time they just drop. So you'll have whole big clusters of yucca, and it's literally generations growing in the same spot, which is kind of cool. So you'll see something that looks like one giant mound of a plant. Part of it looks dead. That's because that was Grandpa's plant. But the grandbabies are growing, and it can do that for hundreds of years. So it's sad, but at the same time, it's like, oh, well, that's not so bad. But that's why you usually see them growing in clusters too. Okay, I have to say this without getting weepy also. Do you guys know what the yucca moth is? Get ready. So you guys know how big the yucca flowers are, right? That's a good size one, lengthwise. So you picture how tiny that little lady is. Itty bitty shit. Like they're literally half the size of my pinky nail. Tiny little things. So they are the exclusive pollinators of the yucca plant. So without that tiny little bug, you would have no yucca left at all. It's crazy. They became exclusive with each other over 40 million years ago. Yeah. And the yucca is the only thing that little moth eats in return. It's amazing. It's amazing. That's why protecting the environment is so important, because you throw off a balance like that, that's huge. That's huge for the landscape. So basically, it's kind of a simple process. The little female, she'll go collect pollen from the plant, so she's helping the plant out. Bees don't do this. You'll see a bee in there, but they're not functioning for the survival of that plant. She'll fly to a different one, lay her little eggs in the female part, the ovary of the next plant. She crawls in there and she goes up to the style, which is where you put the pollen. She makes sure that's done. These next steps blow my mind. Marks it with a pheromone so that other moths know somebody was already there, so they don't overdo it. And then her part of the deal, she gets to lay babies in there, and they will hatch and eat just enough not to hurt anything, but so that they can grow, and off they go. She leaves that pheromone so that they won't overdo it. It's amazing. Like, she's like, oh no, I was already here, and the next one's like, okay, I'll go somewhere else. So, but we call them, like, we joke that they're like little fairies because I'm a weirdo and I've been looking for them my whole life. Do you know how many I've seen?
Wow.
1, not 5. I wish 5, Chris. I've seen 1, and I lost my mind when I saw it. I was like, and it was on my pepper tree, and I was like, no, it's a yucca moth. But they are very, very stealthy. They only really do it. I don't even think it's necessarily at dawn, but around dusk. Very quickly, they're very efficient, but they're also very tiny. So if you guys are bored and you have yucca plants in your yard, if you're like me, picture me out in the bushes. I'm a weirdo. But I thought that was so beautiful. And one of the scientists that wrote a report about where he got a lot of this information, because there's a peer-reviewed article on this, which is really beautiful. If you give me a shout if you want to read it, if you want like 30 pages of this. I just love it. Says, it sounds too good to be true. Two species helping each other survive for millions of years, each getting as much as they give.
Oh.
I know. But 40 million years, pre-Vasquez Rocks, they've been doing that. They love each other. And of course, a little shout out to our other pollinators, underachievers. We have, and I forget the number, I should have looked it up again, but we actually have a big array of native species of bees that are completely different from each other. So these are just a couple shots of local native plants. That was at my house, and I think this was actually here, that, bring up the tail and do the rest of the pollinating, because the yucca moth is busy over there. Reptiles. Last time I did this, there was a couple ladies that were like, no. So if you don't like snakes, sorry. We also have obviously a host of wildlife that lives here in the park that we work really hard to protect. Everything from teeny tiny little lizards up to the mountain lion that I saw here before. It's all important, right? We need to watch out for all of these guys. And so these are the ones on the screen here are the ones you'll probably see more often. You might not see a western snake that much, but certain years I'll see quite a few of them, and they're really distinctive when they're in this phase of having that crazy bright blue tail. It's like electric blue, really beautiful. San Diego alligator lizard, those are the big guys. Yeah. They look like little dinosaurs. If you look at their heads, they're very tough looking, and they can be, I've seen them 18 inches long, head to tip of the tail. Those are gnarly. Leave all the lizards alone. Don't pick up lizards, but especially don't pick up that one, because they bite really hard. These guys can eat little pinky mice and rats, little baby ones. So they'll latch onto your finger really hard. Oh, I can feel it still last time. There was one living on the door track in my garage, so I moved her and she thanked me by latching onto my finger. The ones you'll see the most though are these two. Western fence lizard, which everybody calls a blue belly, and then the side blotch lizard. These two can be kind of hard to tell apart, but usually when you see a little brown lizard, it's one of these guys. You see a big lizard, it's the alligator lizard. And I should mention those guys are neat too because they'll tuck their legs to the side and slither like a snake also, which is really weird. They have these little dinky legs that you can see how tiny that leg is for how big the lizard is. Some others that you'll see, maybe not quite as often. California whiptail, these guys are really neat. These are the ones I've actually seen more in the last year though than I've ever seen before, but there's a lot of them out in the Antelope Valley. They're like speckled, like leopard spots almost. And they do this really funny, I don't know if you guys have seen those. Chris and I always laugh at them because we see them here and they do this wiggle thing. It's really funny. So you can tell those are by their movement. Desert spiny lizard, you don't see those that often here, but I see them once in a while and they're really tough meat. They look like Bowser from Mario. They're like, "Grr." Yeah. California legless lizard, these are really interesting. People never know what to make of these. It's actually a lizard, but it does not have legs, basically evolved out of its legs. And we know it's a lizard because it has eyelids. Snakes do not have eyelids. These guys are more closely related to, it is a lizard, it's not a snake. And they have the cutest little eyelids. So that's another thing, if you guys are gardening, these guys burrow. So just be really careful if you can. Obviously you can only do so much, but a lot of the time when we're digging in the garden, these guys will spring up. And they look like the worms, they're only about this big for a big one. They can be smaller. And they're like electric silver and can have green or blue on them. And they look like little fishing, what do you call those? The little, I guess it's just a lure. I haven't gone fishing in a while, sorry. I'm too busy looking for yucca moths. And this little teeny one, which I never saw growing up, but when we moved into our new house, I saw 2 right off the bat, which was crazy. This is a desert night lizard, really special little guy. They're not very big, teeny tiny thing. They have big black eyes and really interesting kind of, not smooth, but their skin is like not big scales like the other lizards. It's like almost like, looks like sandpaper. And they're strictly nocturnal. They burrow. So a lot of the time, if you're out, this is a weird scenario, but if you're out moving stuff in the dark, like when we would try to look for them, we would lift something up gently and sometimes they'll be under there. But these guys are really interesting too because they have really interesting behavioral habits because lizards aren't typically in groups, right? They just kind of they're kind of solitary unless it's breeding season. But these guys will stay through adolescence with their families and in family groups, kind of like quails do. I know, it's so cute. It's so cute. They're also they have really cute little faces. So you guys probably won't see one of those, but if you see a really weird looking little thing on your porch, it's one of those guys. So just let him be. It is cute. That's what I thought. Snake species, Shirley's favorite. So obviously we have snakes here. Oh, also Susan. Susan's staring darts at me right now. So believe it or not, snakes are very important. Some of us absolutely love snakes. They add such an important role in our ecosystem here and obviously anywhere that they're naturally occurring, right? You can have a problem if you have a non-native species, like people will get a snake and then realize that it needs to eat rats. Ooh, it got really big. I'm just gonna let it go. That's why in places like Florida, you have a problem with these big python and boa species that are not native, that are 8 to 10 feet long that people just release. That's no good. Yeah, that's bad. Coming into your house. But out here, we don't really have that problem. We do have a lot of different species of native snake. So these are the big ones. These are the ones you'll see the most often. Above anything else, probably it's the gopher snake. But also, I've been seeing a ton of these guys in recent years also. Lots and lots and lots of them. San Diego gopher snake is our type. They can get pretty big. Most of the time, they're probably about 3 feet or less. You can have a big one that's over 5 feet. And the bigger they get, obviously, the wider array of food that they can eat. So they can eat all kinds of things from little mice and rats, but also up to, cover your ears, kids. I'm sorry, like baby bunnies and baby ground squirrels and stuff like that. So they are meat eaters only. They don't eat plants. None of these guys eat plants. So you'll see them out cruising. People ask about our educational snakes that we have in this building too. Like, why are they in cages? Why are they in here? We do take them out. We do educational programming with them. But also most of them can't even be released because they were either bred in captivity or they've been in captivity for so long that we can't legally release them. So to protect the native populations, obviously, native animals can have diseases that domestic ones don't. Domestic ones have more diseases that native ones don't. So that's another reason why you don't want to, even if you have a pet gopher snake, don't just release it because it could have picked something up that could make the others ill. So we don't want to do that either. So you'll see that guy. Another one you'll see is the Southern Pacific rattlesnake. Yeah, they look really mean, but we're actually fairly fortunate that our population, this exact species, the Southern Pacific, are actually one of the more docile rattlesnakes. I know that seems kind of like an oxymoron. And they will rattle and get upset if you do startle them or they feel threatened. But a lot of the time, these guys aren't striking. They're not outwardly aggressive that way. They have quite a threshold for you to, because I know, you guys too probably, I've been out hiking or doing yard work where there's one right there and I didn't even know it. And sometimes they don't even rattle because they're either asleep or they're just like, eh. But you have some species like a Western diamondback. So these are not a diamondback, I should point that out. A lot of people call them that because of their patterning, but those are 2 different species. So Western diamondbacks can get huge and can be highly, highly aggressive and easily agitated. Or the Mojave rattlesnake, which a lot of people call a Mojave green. Those guys are very feisty also. And not to say that these guys can't be. They're all individuals, but overall ours are a little more chill than some of the other species that are kind of out towards the Mojave Desert. And then the one that, I hate to play favorites, but one of my favorites is the California king snake. That's a incredibly adapted snake. You guys have probably seen them around. They can get quite large also, up to like 5 feet or more in special situations. But these guys are the ones that are called a king snake because they can go up against a rattler and win and then eat the rattlesnake. Yeah, I know. I know. And they're also just really, really beautiful. Sorry, I just realized I'm blocking it from everybody. So other snakes that you'll see sometimes, but not as often. I should have put that first guy on the first slide because we've been seeing a few more of those too. That's a red coach whip, which is also a red racer. Those guys can be a little feisty. Those guys can also chase after you. I've been chased by a couple of them when you scare them and it's like, whoa, and they come up with their head up. It's like, oh my gosh. They're only 2 feet long, but they're, ooh. So a very similar species to it is just the plain coach whip. So it looks like the other one, but it's brown. It's very nondescript looking. And these guys with the racer on the other one, they're so fast. Like you can't catch them even if you wanted to. They're really, really, really quick. This one, we actually have one here, Crusher. She's in the little terrarium over there. It's a rosy boa. So these guys are all constrictors. Even the venomous snakes are constrictors. I think this is the only boa that we do have in this area. I have only ever in my life, and again, I'm out looking, I've seen one, and it was in the park, but that was 10 or 12 years ago. So these guys you're not going to see quite as often. And then this one is another one that people don't know what to do with or don't know how to recognize it. It's a night snake. Tiny little thing, itty bitty, especially the baby ones are really little. They almost look like a miniature gopher snake, kind of, but tiny. So this is the only other venomous snake that we have in this area, but it's not a threat to you guys because their mouth is teeny tiny. And instead of the Southern Pacific rattlesnake that has 2 huge fangs right up front, this guy only has 1 venomous fang towards the back of his mouth, and it's rear facing. So you have to really try to stick your pinky in his mouth. And it's not even enough to, I don't think, do anything to you. So basically, and again, just don't go bothering animals. Is the theme of that. And I've only ever seen 1 or 2 of these guys too. Because they're small and because they're nocturnal, you don't see them all that often. So real quick to give you guys, even though we're kind of towards the end of what we call snake season, even though if you have a mild winter, they'll pop up in the middle of winter also, like it happened a few years ago. So I'm just going to give you a couple of the big things so that you can kind of stay safe around snakes. You can share it with your kids. So we're going to compare the 2 that we see the most of, our gopher snake and the Southern Pacific rattlesnake. So basically venomous snakes, and they're not poisonous, right? That's not poison, it's venom. They have a big spade-shaped head, a big thick head with really prominent space for those venom glands, but they also have a defined neck. They have that really beautiful spade and then it goes in and kind of pinches in. They're more matte. They don't have shiny scales. It looks more like sandpaper. And they're much bigger. They're thicker and flatter. So they're very stocky compared to how long they are. So if you were to, which probably seems gross, if you were to cut a snake in half, right? If you cut a rattlesnake in half, it'll look more like this, right? Flatter on the bottom, kind of triangular. If you cut a non-venomous snake, it's going to look round like that. I know, I don't like them either. I know. Baby's afraid. I don't want to get bit by a rattlesnake. Non-venomous, so you have a smaller head that's not much larger than the size of the body, so they don't have really a defined neck. It's just kind of one length or one width all the way up. Not really a defined jaw. Sometimes people can't necessarily tell which side is the head either, especially with a rosy boa that's blunt on either end. They're like, which way is the head? They have shinier and smoother scales that are usually smaller, and they have a long, lean body. And obviously, no rattle. So if you look close, and this is why we have our educational species here in the center, because if you don't know, you're like, oh, they look a lot alike. But if you know what you're looking at, they don't look anything alike, right? So you have the eye, you can see better in the illustration, the eye of the rattlesnake is elliptical like a cat's eye. There's one long vertical pupil. And if you look at the gopher snake or any of the non-venomous snakes, they have a round pupil like we do. And you can't always see the head or the tail, obviously, but that's why it's good to know head to tail what it looks like. Because a lot of the time you can only see one little part of it. These guys have only small hooked teeth that go back. These guys have them also, but they also have the business teeth up front, which are hollow, which allow for the venom to seep out from those glands. They both have forked tongues. They both use the tongues to sniff, so you guys will see them going out, and they're collecting air particles. And there's something called the Jacobson gland or Jacobson organ that's on the roof of their mouth. So they're collecting, and then they relay that information to the roof of their mouth so that their brain can say, I'm smelling a rabbit, I'm smelling something dangerous, So it's actually pretty simple, but they're really specially adapted to survive in places like this where they only have to go out and hunt. And that's why these animals do pretty well in captivity, because they're not out hunting and eating all the time. They spend a lot of their time in a burrow hiding, because the animals we're going to talk about next love to eat these guys. So they're very, very vulnerable, right? They can't see birds cruising up above them. So they spend very little time out cruising. They only have to eat every few weeks or more. Our rattlesnake here, he'll only eat sometimes 4 to 6 to 8 weeks. He'll refuse food because he's like, no, I'm good. And he's a perfect weight. He's very healthy. Yeah, he's like, no, I'm good. Like, we'll offer it to him and we'll wait and he won't take it. But he's not underweight. They have a slower metabolism that way, which is really important for their survival. If they had to go out and hunt every day, you're putting yourself at risk to getting hunted by something else. So.
Did you say that pit on the rattlesnake,
Mm-hmm.
that's the gland?
The gland's on the root in their mouth. The pit, it's basically, and that's part of why they call it a pit viper. And Chris can help me clarify more because I'm drawing a blank. Part of it is the nasal system for breathing. What's the second pit for?
Well, the one's right in front of the leaves where it has a sense of heat.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, heat sensing. Yeah. And like I said, the family that they're in are called pit vipers because they have that. Makes them look extra mean. You look at them close in the face and it's like, ooh, that is a tough looking animal. So we're going to move on to birds, but I just want to leave you with a little baby. So these are the ones that you guys might see also a lot in the springtime. For reference, these are pine needles. So be real careful. And there is a common, I should say this too before we move from snakes, there's a very common misconception that a baby is the worst one that you can run into. I will take this little peanut over Fluffy in here any day. Fluffy has giant venom glands. Little baby Peanut has teeny tiny glands. Also does not have the best aim. And even though they say, a lot of the justification for that is, oh, they latch and they don't know how to let go. Trust me, a little tiny newborn guy, probably going to miss you. But also the fangs are much, much smaller, so they won't, a lot of the time they can't even get through your jeans if you're wearing pants. But also they're not as, I don't want to say dangerous, but they don't have the risk that the larger guys do. But good rule of thumb, be careful all the time. I wish I could focus on all the native species of animals that live here. We can't, obviously, so I'm gonna go over the ones that most people find the most interesting. We have them here as animal ambassadors, and they're the ones just that people ask us the most about. So here's just a little overview of the birds that we have. Some of the birds that we have, these are mostly birds of prey or large species of bird. So the largest one we do have in this area is the golden eagle. We don't have that many, but I have seen a couple in the last 10 years. Moving on, we have turkey vultures, red-tailed hawks, great horned owls, common ravens, some red-shouldered hawks, not as many as we used to, barn owls, Cooper's hawks, which are little hooligans. Yes, roadrunners, which are amazing. I'll have to do a talk just on those guys. California scrub jay, the American kestrel, California quail, California towhee, which are really cute little brown guys. Bewick's wren, which I haven't seen that many of in the last couple years, but some. House finches, little cute, teeny tiny guys. And then the bush tit, which is like, oh, they're so cute. They're like this big. I know, look at his little face. So cute. So real quick, I know you guys, if you're local, you love ravens. Usually people are like, no. They're John's favorite. He knows I'm gonna look at him. So the reason that so many people are frustrated with ravens, I hate to tell you, is because they're really smart. And humans get very annoyed with animals that are very, very smart. We love dolphins, right? Because they're not coming in our yards and getting in the trash can. Ravens and corvids in general actually have some of the highest ratio of brain to body size, which is why they drive us crazy. They don't drive me crazy. I love them. Yeah, they're the best. We don't really, so the raven is often confused with the crow, the American crow. We don't really have crows here in this area. You'll see them kind of passing through, but for the most part, we have these big old ravens, which are also related in the same family to those things that a lot of people call a blue jay. It's actually a scrub jay. Blue jays are, more back east. But these guys are both very intelligent. They can do things like recognize faces. And the crazy thing is they learn patterns. They learn how to use tools. And they can somehow, and they don't know how they do it, but they can pass genetic memory onto their offspring. So they've done experiments, I think it was in England, the big one that they did, where they'll use these masks, and some of the certain masks will be really nice to the ravens. Some will leave them alone. Others will be not so nice and throw rocks or different things at them. The grandbabies know which is which. How does that work? So they're really, really remarkable. And I think the longer we go and the more we study them, we're going to realize that we're really dealing with an animal that's one of the most highly evolved, highly adapted, highly intelligent animals that we have. And the funny thing with ravens is that if you treat them not so nice, if you yell at them and maybe shoot your BB guns and do things you're not supposed to at them, they're going to make your life a little more difficult. If you're nice to them, they reciprocate. My mom is so nice to her ravens. Her neighbor, not as much. They make all kinds of noise in the middle of the night at the neighbor's house. Perfectly quiet at her house. And my mom's dog, she rescued this giant puppy. He's almost like a Pyrenees, big monster guy. He killed one of the babies. They were not upset with her. They let it go. But they dive bombed the neighbor who used a slingshot and threw rocks at him before. They'll dive bomb you. If they're not happy with you, you'll know it. So, yeah.
So I was just going to ask, because I thought I've seen ravens, and I thought I've seen crows.
You may have.
The ones that don't have the, pronounced head and the beak like that, are they a younger raven or a female raven?
They can be. It might be a crow. I see crows like once or twice a year kind of hanging out for a day or two, and then they kind of move on. There are some like in Santa Clarita, but if you go down to like Pasadena at our other park, I see crows there. So they're around. It's just for the most part. Yeah, and I don't know, I didn't put that slide on here, but overall ravens are a lot larger. You can remember raven, V for raven, their tail is more pointed. C for crow, theirs are more rounded like a fan. Yeah. And
The females look the same, or
they look the same. The males are a little bit bigger, but all the ravens have a big, gnarly honking beak, and their body size is just a lot bigger. Crows have a smaller beak. But also, if you don't see them next to each other, like in a picture, it's harder to tell, too. And they sound different. The crows have a little wimpier voice than these guys do. These guys can be very loud.
Are these the ones that can kind of chuckle, too?
Yeah. Yeah, and when you hear that chuckly noise, that's the female. So say, hey, girl, don't dive bomb me. Thank you. So moving on with our other little scavenger is the turkey vulture. One of my favorites. Look. I love them. These guys basically look like a mini California condor. We don't have a ton here, but again, you'll see them hanging around, cruising, soaring really high, just big, huge wings, black and white. They're a true scavenger, so they eat nothing but dead things. And the reason they have this big, ugly, bald head is because if you're sticking your head in a carcass, you don't want a bunch of feathers to get infected and make yourself sick, right? So they're actually quite sanitary that way. These guys are incredibly sociable with each other. You'll see them in big groups. We have one that was a non-releasable animal ambassador that we have. She lives at Clarita. She'll do things like, she's social with people because she's not with birds. So she'll play tug of war with like a little glove or a piece of fabric. She loves men in uniform because Dave, our animal keeper that helped rescue and rehab her, wears, a Class B green, like Chris is wearing, uniform. So anytime, women, she's like, whatever. Like she likes me, I can hold her and stuff, but she sees a police or a sheriff or anybody in uniform, she's like, ooh, hi. Yeah, so she's what we call imprinted. That's not natural, we don't want that, but she's been in captivity since she was so young, so she doesn't know what's going on. Birds of prey. So I'm gonna run through this quick because I'm gonna let you guys go on time. Basically, birds of prey are in a category that's called a raptor, right? A raptor is a bird that has these among other features, but these are the two big features. You have a meat-tearing hooked beak, and you have really powerful talons, powerful toes with sharp talons on the end. You have 4. Owls have 2 in the front, 2 in the back. Hawks, falcons, everybody else has 3 in the front and 1 in the back. And that back one means business. A bird of prey specifically is a raptor that hunts. So like the turkey vulture is a raptor, but it doesn't hunt, so it's not a bird of prey. So that's a very specific designation that you probably don't need to know. Here at Vasquez and throughout the natural areas at our other parks, we're licensed state and federally to house and handle these birds of prey. We get inspections every year by Fish and Wildlife so that we're keeping on top of everything. We practice a lot of falconry handling practices. So we use gloves, we use leashes, because most of our birds cannot safely fly. A lot of them have missing eyes, permanently injured wings, stuff like that. So they can't safely, none of them can safely be released, which is why they're with us, because release is always the goal. So these, I'm not going to talk a ton about each species, but I want to just show you guys some pictures of birds of prey that we have in the area, but we also have a lot of these between us and Clarita Canyon. I think we have almost all of these species, so you can see them up close. So I'm going to go small to large. This is the American kestrel. It's a type of falcon. It's the smallest falcon in North America. That's Mr. Peepers, who lives here with us. He is the cutest. And you can't tell here, but he's actually missing one of his eyes. But he likes to point his big eye at you. He's a ham bone too, that one. So you also have, this is one of the few birds of prey that exhibit what's called sexual dimorphism. And that's where you can just tell by looking if it's a male or a female. Red-tailed hawks, all the others, you can't do that. Raven, you can't tell. So this is a male. He has the really beautiful coloring, bluish gray with that really rusty red. And he's got 2 ladies fighting over him. And he's just like, whatever. 2 ladies. One that you guys probably hear of all the time is a Cooper's hawk. So not very large, right? Nowhere near as big as a red tail. These guys you see a lot because they're very brazen. They, honestly too, when we help facilitate rehabilitation or rescue for these guys, we go through years where we get nothing but Cooper's hawks because they don't really think before they act. They can do things like fly into windows. We've had people say, I saw it hit the ground. It was in a dive and it just hit the ground because it's focused on its food but not on its own safety. And it's actually a Cooper's hawk that attacked Mr. Peepers while someone was holding him, and that's how he lost his eye. But that Cooper's hawk went after a person. Not the person itself, but it ignored the person because it saw the bird and it was like, oh, tunnel vision. So these are a few different, you guys will notice these birds look very different. So the one at the end is a juvenile, and a lot of birds of prey, their first year, their feathers look totally different than when they're an adult. So that's a juvenile, and that's the adult that you recognize with that beautiful, like almost eerie looking red orange eye. Peregrine falcons, very, very special animal. This is actually the fastest animal on the planet, clocked over 200 miles an hour. They think possibly up to 240 in a dive. That's not powered flight, but it's in a dive. There was a nesting pair of these guys that they saw just in Newhall a couple years ago. So we do have them. Incredible hunters. You can see the stealth in profile next to a peregrine. So we borrow a lot, especially in aerospace, from different native species, whether they're marine dolphins or you have flyers that fly almost better than we can engineer. Barn owls. I know, they're beautiful, aren't they? So these guys are really, really special. They're what we call a silent flyer. Most owls are silent flyers. So if you guys hear, you don't even hear it, but you see something white go over you at night, it's one of these guys. Everybody thinks it's a ghost. They're like, a ghost flew over me. It's probably a barn owl. We have a lot of these guys. This is actually the most widely spread bird of prey on the planet. They're everywhere. They're incredibly adaptable. They're incredible hunters. They can hunt in complete dark based on hearing alone. And they're interesting because I put a picture of Scooter here. That's our owl we've had here for about 18 years. That beautiful white face is not just for looks, but they have kind of a satellite dish thing that helps them triangulate exactly where a sound is coming from because they have ears that are different levels from each other. They're offset. So they can tell if it's coming from over here, they can zero in on it and just go straight for it. So they're really, really gifted hunters. And they make crazy noises, screeching, and they sound like banshees. It's kind of terrifying. But they do not hoot. So if you guys hear hooting, it's not one of these guys. So this really quick before we talk about the great horned owl, I'm going to pass this around. So this is a great horned owl feather. It's funny because a wild bird dropped this one right in front of the building here. And I walked out, I was like, oh, that's easy. So what I want you to look at is the edge of it, which you can see has those serrations, and the surface. You can feel gently with your fingers, very fuzzy to break up wind resistance. So let me see if I can do this with the mic. Oh, it doesn't like that. You notice you don't hear anything. If you take a raven feather, you hear that whoosh, like when a raven takes off, you hear that loud whooshing sound. These guys don't do that because their feathers are so adapted to break up any wind resistance that it makes nearly no sound. Great horned owl, which you guys are very familiar with. These are the guys that hoot that you'll hear. These guys can get very, very large. They're also highly adaptable. They're all over the world. We have quite a few of them out here. You guys probably hear them, especially during breeding season. You hear them talking to each other through the trees. Another one that everybody knows fairly well is the red-tailed hawk. This is probably, aside from the owls, because we don't see how many we have, this is probably the one that you'll see the most often. Really powerful hunters. This is one of the apex predators, meaning towards the top of the food chain that we have in the natural world here. These guys are extremely, extremely powerful. Big birds for sure. So this is what you see when you see them in the air. You can tell it's a red-tailed, mostly based by the size, but also just by the shape of the wings. They have these big, beautiful, thick wings, chunky wings, not like a falcon. Falcon wings are very, thin and tapered. Color, again, varies. This is a juvenile. See how she's real white underneath throughout. That's an adult over there, an adult wing, and that's the back of an adult. So they're called a red tail because of how they look on the back, not underneath. So underneath, their tails are not red. And we have one here too that you guys can check out. We have, and we're almost done. I'm going to have you guys done by 3. Yeah. We have a lot of species of small mammals. We actually have a lot of rodents, which if you live up in the boonies like I do, you will deal with them. We have jackrabbits too, but we also have a lot of cottontails. We don't have as many jackrabbits as we used to. But for rodents, we have things like burrowing critters. We have little tiny shrews, which are really cute. Gophers, which I know you guys love, but they're native, We got to work around them. Wood rats, which a lot of people call a pack rat because they'll kind of trade. They'll come get in your garage, but they'll also leave you some juniper seeds while they take things. That's what they were doing at my mom's house. Pinion mice, really cute little guys with big ears. And the California ground squirrel, which you guys also know and love. I know you can't get enough of them. And that's another one. They're just so well adapted and they breed so quickly that sometimes you feel like you're drowning in them. But again, they've been here for a long time. They were a staple food for people that lived here in the past, even the homesteaders. They would go out hunting ground squirrels and not even make a dent on the population. Larger mammals, this is one I wanted to show you guys that we do have that you don't see that often, but they are here. I find their scat on the ground. I see their footprints. I see their burrows. We do have raccoons, not a ton, but I see their little footprints behind the building sometimes. We actually have gray foxes. I don't know if you guys knew we have those. Lots of coyotes, which is another animal that's so adaptable and so intelligent that a lot of people have a hard time dealing with. But that's a whole nother debate too. The American black bear, which out here they're actually brown, they're not black, but little guys, little terrified guys. So every couple years there are sightings of black bears. Sometimes I'll see scat in the park, but not very often, but mostly they're over by where the wineries and the airport is. So you'll kind of see them. They call the fire department, there's a bear in my yard. Just let him go, he'll leave, he's fine. Bobcats and mountain lions. And I have seen one mountain lion here in the park before. It was years ago, and it was way up on the ridge. And by the time I figured out what it was, she was long gone. So just be cautious. When you guys are out walking in the park, especially if you have little pets, be very mindful of that. Maybe if you have a tiny dog, get one of those baby Bjorn things. That's probably good. But you never know, obviously, right? Because this is a safe space for them to be. And with being almost 1,000 acres, we have a lot of open area for them to feel safe, to hunt, to behave as they normally would. So we have to remember we're entering their place, right, when we come here and enjoy. So we want to be really mindful of, like I said, even those little tiny lizards up to the big, mountain lion and black bear. We just want to be respectful of that and appreciate that. I'm going to jump ahead. That's not an important one. Okay. So these I just wanted to post a picture of. These are all pictures that I've taken here in the park. So even though you don't see these guys, they are here. So bobcat print, which I took down by that mysterious leak in the driveway. Coyote, little raccoon, which looks like little human prints. And then we have lots of little coyote and animal trails too. So when you're hiking, make sure, don't use the tiny little trails. Use the big people trails. Let's let the coyotes use those. But yeah, that's just a reminder that even though we don't see them all the time, they are here. And I know you guys care. That's why you came out today. But just, help us spread the word of how sensitive all of this habitat is and how we want to be respectful and cooperative while we enjoy our time out in the park. So I'll do really quick before I take a couple questions and I can turn you guys loose. I want to give you guys a preview. You guys will know who this guy is. So next week is a really special, or next week, why do I keep saying next week? Next month is our talk on a couple big things, a couple really big aspects of the park. The first half, we're going to talk about the native and indigenous history of the area. So this is Rudy Ortega. If you guys know Rudy, he's the tribal president of the Tataviam. He's fifth, right? Fifth in his family, fifth generation as the tribal leader, which is really amazing. So we have this really long period of inhabitants here in the park. So we're going to talk about the archaeology, native knowledge and practices, some really, really neat stuff. Foodways, cultural practices, all kinds of cool stuff like that. And the second half, we're going to talk about this stinker, which everybody asks about. So we talk about the transition from native inhabitants to European, Spanish, Mexican, and early American settlement. Really, really interesting history. So if you're interested in that, join us next month. There's little flyers with all the dates on it. So it's questions that a lot of people ask are about these two aspects of our history. So really, really cool things to come if you're interested. And if you don't mind listening to me talk for 2 hours, then we'll be good. All right. Thanks, everybody. I went 2 minutes over.